Hello, how's everyone doing? Pastor Randy from Shepherd's Light Ministry. Thanks for joining us on our online community. So today, I should have did this yesterday. I'm sorry, I'm a day behind. Yesterday was Sunday with church, so I'm a day behind. But we started the book of Joshua yesterday. Isn't that exciting? So I want to go through some things with Joshua, because oftentimes we read these books and we're like, okay, we're doing daily reading, we're reading, but we're clueless about the history of the book or the meaning or the purpose. And when you know the who, what, when, where, how, and all that good stuff, it kind of it brings the book more to life, that you can actually register and say, hey, yeah, this is what it means. I get it now. So this is a really cool book. And it's actually one, let me be honest, I haven't dove into this book as much as I should have, of others. Deuteronomy, I've dug in so many times. Nehemiah, Esther, Ruth. There's so many books that I've just dug into deep. And Joshua's one I've read several times, but I haven't dove into it enough. I need to dive into it more. I feel as I started reading this, because it's a really cool book. There's so many miracles that happen in it. And Joshua was there with Moses, right? He also, Moses, or the whole Bible actually sets the foundation of Joshua, the first five books, the Pentateuch, or the Torah. Okay, I can't ever say that word right. But it provides the background for Joshua and the people preparing for him. And it starts back in Genesis. An example is Exodus was their escape from slavery, and they gave the law. Then in Leviticus, it prepared them for worship. Numbers and Deuteronomy prepared them for a civic structure. That's where all the law was put down. So this is a really cool book. And Joshua's throughout the whole New Testament. Some scholars and that actually tried putting the first 6 books together and changing stuff and adding Joshua and this and that. But anyways, we're not going to get on all that stuff. But yeah, that's how deep I dove into this. But this is a book of faithfulness of God, okay? The faithfulness of God through his presence, his power, his protection, provision, and faithful promises. Listen to all them P's. Presence, power, protection, provision, and promises. Whoa! That's 5 P's. Okay, so remember the 5 P's when you read in the book of Joshua. So this book is just amazing. And actually, I'm learning quite a bit too, because it has 42 verses of fulfilled prophecy. There's no unfulfilled prophecy in the book of Joshua. 14 messages from God. 98 commandments. So there's 98. You should do this. And 44 predictions and 15 promises. 15 promises. So there's a lot in this book. And Joshua he's an amazing man. He actually is known to be the second greatest leader of Israel. Moses was first, he was second, and he actually learned, he walked with Moses, so of course he's going to be great, or he should be great, because he walked with him, and Moses was just phenomenal. But his birth name was actually Hoshea, which in Hebrew means salvation. Ooh, isn't this getting good? But Moses changed his name. Isn't that interesting? It was Moses that changed his name. Moses called him Joshua, which is Hebrew. In Hebrew is Yoshua, the Lord saves. In Greek, it means Jesus. Whew. Are you are you staying with me here? Are you feeling this? So he succeeded Moses as a leader of Israel to lead the people into the promised land. And this was in Exodus 17:9. Moses placed him in charge in the book of Deuteronomy. He placed him in charge. And he was one of the 2 spies, which we learned about this in Deuteronomy. He was one of the two, him and Caleb were the only 2 of the 12 spies who actually make it into the promised land. Pretty cool, right? Or him and Caleb. Yeah, him and Caleb were the only 2 that made it through. because he had the faith and the courage to recommend the advancement into the promised land. That's why. Because he was faithful and he did it. And he had victory against the Amalekites. So this book is the story and the history from when Moses died. Because remember, last time it was Moses getting ready to die was in Deuteronomy. So now in Joshua, this book, Moses died. He's already gone through the conquest of the Canaan to the death of Joshua. So now we go, Moses dies. They appoint Joshua. He conquers the Canaanites. And then eventually he passes away too. Which happens, right? So in the first 5 books of the parchment, the Torah provided the background for Joshua and the people to prepare for this, right? Now, the preparation's like over and done with, and guess what? It's go time. Like, it's for real happening now. They're finally in the promised land. It took like 5 books, right? 5 books to prepare us for this. You need a soap opera? Why do people watch soap operas? Why do you watch all these crime shows? Like, we got it right here in the Bible. Like, it took them 5 books of the Bible, 5 chapters, long chapters. They're not short, to get us to Joshua, to get into the promised land. Whew. These people there was a lot of stuff that happened. And Moses had to come on, y'all, straighten up more than once to keep them so that anyone could even make it in the promised land, because, there were some battles there. So in this book, chapters 1 through 12 is the first 5 or 6 years of the death of Moses, okay? The last 2 chapters is probably about 20 years later. So it's probably about 20 years later before you get to the last. So there's a lot of years in this book. But for Joshua, he was born in Egypt and he was Moses' right-hand man, right? Right-hand man, always there. During Exodus and in the desert wandering, he was a great military commander. So he was a commander. He stood faithfully beside Moses, and he stayed faithful to the Lord. So that is so important. And he was Moses' companion as he gave the law in Sinai. Okay? So he was his companion. He was there. He stood beside him. He was no, this is the way God wants it, and I'm going to stand by you, and I'm going to help you, and we're going to enforce this. He probably died when he was about 110 years old. The same as Joseph. Isn't that, see, do you see all these connections? So parts of this book in Joshua 10, 12 through 13, and 24 through 29 and 33 were written about after Joshua's death. So part of this is after he died. So obviously somebody else wrote this, but the majority of this was Joshua's life and when he was here, and he wrote it. So that there was probably 88 when he was probably around 88 when he led the Israelites into the promised land. Not being able to talk today. And he went from being a slave. He was a slave, right? A slave to a free man, bringing the Israelites into the promised land. Okay? God can use us all. It doesn't matter who you are. He can use us. He was a slave, then he went into a free man, and then led people into the promised land. He was a man without a country. He was a general, an ill-equipped, nominated army, army, okay? So he was ill-equipped, he was in charge of the army, and he conquered against incredible odds, land agent, statesman, and a settler. So he was a lot, okay? That was he did a lot of hats. He wore a lot of hats. But most of us know him as not just standing beside Moses, but also bring him into the promised land. It's almost I feel like people say, okay, Joshua held up Moses' arm, he stood beside him. And then he took people into the promised land. And then it's like everyone kind of forgets everything else he did. I have no idea why. But this is a book. So when you're reading this, remember more of Joshua than just the promised land, okay? There's so many incredible things that happen here. The theme, I mean, just look at the theme of itself. And this book is a recorded of a conquest of the Israelites into the promised land under God's leadership, right? Remember, God was leading Joshua into this position. And when he sent them into this position, he also told him, like, hey, you're going into this. It starts out like with the prostitute and the spy, and like they're spying. The prostitute hides them. It's like, please protect us. They're afraid of you. The people, they've heard these stories about you and they're already afraid of you. Just please protect me. And she hit them and they went out the window. And that's even really cool. Like when you look into how their houses used to make, like their roofs were usually flat. They were hiding in the roofs underneath the flags, because that's where which is kind of like wheat or something if you look at it. And that's where they hid them up there, because that's where they used to put that stuff on the roof to dry out. And it was flat. And then she had a house in the wall, which then there was a window, because there was actually the wall that protected the city. And they climbed out, and she's like, just remember us and protect us. And they're like, okay, but you got to stay in the house. And so he went back after they waited in the woods for 3 days, and then they went back, right? Like this is setting the climax to get to before they get into the promised land. But just this is like, gearing us up. It's like getting us started. Like, okay, like what's going to happen? Like, how are they going to do this? Like they're working with a prostitute. Is this even right? And so all these things are happening. And then you go to cross the Jordan River, and the river parts just like the Red Sea did as soon as they walked in. Like they walked in, and then the Jordan River parted. And as long as the ark stood in the middle, it all stayed. Like the walls were up, and it was the highest time of this river, and they walked through it, and some of the 12 grabbed the stones, and then they stacked them up so they could remember, like, this is what happened. Well, then so this all happens, and they're walking around the Jericho wall for 6 days, and then the 7th day they walk over, and the walls come to, I mean, like, this is such an incredible book. How can you not like this book, right? There's so many things, and this is like an adventure. I feel like we're on an adventure reading this book. And Joshua is leading us into this promised land, but he also had to keep the people in check, because they're going into this promised land, right? And there's new people in there. You don't know who you're going to come into. So the promised land was it was a pagan land. It was very pagan. And God placed a witness in the land with the election of Abraham and his descendants as the chosen people. And the people of Canaanite pressed in the worship of numerous gods. Like they had gods and goddesses. They were like very pagan. They're worshiping all these other gods, and they're not worshiping the Lord like they should be. They're just read it. Might remind you of a lot of things that are going on today. By the time of the conquest, the religious climax of the Canaan had grown so bad that a variety of the detestable practices expressed forbidden to the Israelites included cult prostitution and child sacrifice that had evolved in Leviticus 18:21, Deuteronomy 12:31, and 23:17. And these people, like the Canaanites, were so bad. A lot of the that when they were going in there, Joshua was like, hey, like, you can't marry them. You gotta keep your distance, stay away. Like, don't intermarry with them. It's not good. Like, he was calling for spiritual degeneration and for them to stay pure. And a lot of the theologians say that the Canaanites had a rampant vaginal diseases, and the Israelites that's another reason why they needed to stay away. Like there was all these sexual diseases running around because they were stuck in sexual sin. And so there was this plague of that. And he's like, hey, you just got to stay away. Like, you got to stay pure. And this goes back to the faithfulness of God, that they needed to be faithful to him. Like, he's faithful to us. We need to be faithful to him, and we need to stay away from him. Like, there's a reason he's telling us to stay away. It's kind of like us sometimes. We're like, don't touch the stove. And our kids are like, huh, why? And we don't always feel like we have to explain ourselves and say, because it's hot. But we know it's better for our kids not to touch the stove. This is kind of like God. He's like, stay away from them. Don't intermarry. Don't be having sexual relations with them. It's not going to be good. And just don't mingle with them. And some people, they just can't listen, but you finish reading the book. So anyways, let's go through this a little bit. So the first part of this book is where the climax gets started. And this is where the adventure really starts vamping up, right? This is where the mystery really begins, like as we watch them go into the promised land, right? So this is the first part of the part tells us Joshua's commissioned by God. Like, God commissions him. He's like, okay, here you go. And then the miracles of crossing the Jordan happen. And then Rahab, the prostitute, and that I just went over, and the cabbage, and then the walking around the Jericho 4 times for 6 days. The 7th day is when the walls come tumbling down. Like, they come tumbling down. Boom! Like, just coming down. Then we had the failure of AI, which I can't wait. That happens in reality for us. And then the election of the altar of Mount Ebal, where the law is solemnly read to the people. And the miracle of the sun staying up for 24/7. It's like, what? The sun didn't set? How's that happen? And did they sleep? Like, do they sleep? Come on, just read. Like, do they get some sleep? What are they doing? 24 hours? Come on. Read for yourself and find out. And later there was a division and Joshua instructs Israel. Like, this is later on in the book. He instructs Israel that they are a covenant people who need to trust in God and refrain from sin because it hinders their relationship with God. In this reality, knock, knock on the door. Hello. The less make him mad. Okay, the less you make God mad. And this is what Joshua was telling them. The less you make God mad, you won't have to go through his judgment. Judgment won't come upon you. You just have to trust in God. Like, you got to trust in him. You got to refrain from sin. And you got to be faithful. You got to, just stay out of your sin and be faithful. This is like what Joshua was telling them at the end. But this is where it gets even more like, look into this towards the end of the book, because Joshua was one of the only faithful priests. Remember this. Like, there's a few of them, but he's one of the only ones. We went through it on Deuteronomy. I'm not going to go into it. But after Joshua, the Feast of the Tabernacles was not kept until Nehemiah brought it back. So the Feast of the Tabernacles is going to go away until we get back into Nehemiah. So there's things you're going to see that after Joshua, we just don't see them anymore for a while. They kind of go away and they're not. Remember, he was one of the last leaders that actually like followed the law and the covenant, and there wasn't a few of them, and we just went through this. So watch the Deuteronomy video if you need a little bit of a fresher and are up here. But there's things that you just look for and just be aware of, because now that I'm bringing them to your attention, you might see them. Maybe you did see them. Sometimes we read past things. Sometimes it's good to have conversations because we pick things up that we missed. I watched a movie yesterday that I watched a month ago, and guess what? I saw something that I totally missed the first time I watched it. I was like, wait, I didn't see that the first time. So every time you read the Bible or read a book, you're going to pick new stuff up. And when you talk to people, you're going to pick other stuff up because they did. So read this book, get into it, and see what you can discover. It's such a great adventure. And they're going into the promised land. They're getting saved. They're getting set free. They're getting delivered. They're getting restored. They're getting renewed. Isn't that what Jesus does for us? I wonder why Joshua had that name. maybe y'all can figure it out. I set the stage. So it's your time. Go. Read the daily readings. Get into Joshua. Dive in. See what you can discover. Discover something new. Just dive in and see what you can discover and see how it changes your life. And I'll talk to y'all later. So have a blessed day. Enjoy Joshua. We got, let's see how many. We have about a week. We have a week in this almost. Saturday we start Judges. So enjoy this week of Joshua, and I'll talk to y'all later.